Welcome to another episode of All About PR. I'm your host, Tarun Chitrathan. If you're tuning in for the first time, on this podcast, we speak to experts from the field of PR and communication from across the world and bring you interesting conversations from it. In PR, we rely on effective communication from all ends of the spectrum to earn our bread and butter. Yet, there are more than a few slips that happen along the way. Some we catch in time, others we really don't, and it's fine because it's humanly impossible to be perfect all the time. Else, we would all be robots. However, what if we had a list of communication mistakes to avoid? Would that not be a list that you would want? Today, we have with us Neha Mishra, who will talk to us about 5 communication mistakes to avoid and help us understand the nuances of effective communication and mistakes to avoid from a PR lens. Neha brings an experience of more than a decade in the field of corporate communication and marketing within FMCG and hospitality industry. Today, she's a successful business coach who specializes in competency development through coaching, mentoring, and training organizations and individuals under her brand Neha Talks and Epinomi Consulting. And when you start creating, it doesn't just stop at one. She's also the creator of an open stage platform called as the Mic Talk, where people can express themselves openly, improve their self-confidence and communication capabilities. How cool is that? So let's welcome Neha Mishra to join us. Welcome, Neha. Welcome to All About PR. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm joining you from Pune, and I believe it's raining in Bangalore and in Pune simultaneously. So what a lovely weather.
Yes, we shall enjoy the weather together. So before we get started and delve into this very interesting subject, what has your professional journey been like so far?
Okay, great. So it's continuing to be a bumpy ride. And I think I started my entrepreneurial journey of just a few years before COVID hit. And that's when I left hotels, and I was with hotels and the comms teams for quite a long time and leadership positions and so on and so forth. And then when I moved, I decided to enter into the training and development field and specializing into the area of communication. Quite a diverse thing here and there, but I think I found many common connections, and we can talk about that some other day. So when I started from there, COVID hit, and I was just trying to find my little place. I started as a solopreneur and then started growing slowly, and eventually I was still testing waters. I mean, think about it. You were still testing waters and COVID hits. Come back to question, and you were in shambles. And that's exactly what happened with me. But I think the best part from then to now is that I think I have seen something what people see after 15 years or so of their experience of their entrepreneurial journey. I've seen most of those things in a very short span of time, and that has made me more resilient and more ready for the crisis. And think about it, if you're a communication person preparing everyone else for crisis and crisis plans, etc., and not ready for one by themselves. So I think it's been exciting, it's been really nice, and I'm looking forward to many more years to come.
That's awesome to hear. When you become an entrepreneur, the kind of crises that you deal with are very different from when you're actually working for someone. So, what prompted you to become an entrepreneur in this field? What was your eureka moment?
Tarun, you're asking me such a strong question, my eureka moment and so on and so forth. But, I will like disrupt the fun a little bit by saying that it was not at all a eureka moment for me, because the company that I joined when I moved from Bangalore to Pune decided to shut down. And it was a huge, and I wouldn't, of course, not mention about it, but it was a huge organization. And when it did shut down, I was, in fact, in a belief that I will get a job wherever I want. And although it had just been a year and a half that I moved to Pune, and it was a time when I really thought I can go places and I can do this and that. And I was very hopeful. But, that's exactly where I'm getting. That not every entrepreneurial journey starts with an intent to be an entrepreneur, an intent to have a 50 people, 100 people team, or so on and so forth. Sometimes it just happens to you. And sometimes you realize that when things are not going in your way, how can you be a little more experimental, more of a self-believer, to be able to test waters, like I said a while back. So for me, it was more about testing waters, checking it out, trying my own potential, going back to the drawing board and understanding what are the other aspects of my personality. Because, hotels spoil you. And they spoil you so much that you feel it's just you, and everything revolves around you. And I was living in that myth, in that utopia, and it really got me into a place where I had to rethink, redefine, and I take a lot of pride in it. That when I redefine, although I did not know that this is something I'm going to continue, but then from that moment to now, at least I'm today confident that if a few years down the line I don't enjoy this anymore, feel is not going in the right direction, I know that I can still pick up myself from that place and rediscover some other part of me which I don't know yet, or I'm not focusing on as yet. That's the beauty of my entrepreneurial journey.
I think that's the beauty of entrepreneurship as a field. So when did it hit you? When did you realize that I am an entrepreneur? I'm doing this on my own.
There are many moments. I love the laugh that you have at the other end, because you know this exactly, right? Like now when people are trying to pull you through all corners, you realize you are all on your own. When people are looking up at you and sometimes calling you up and saying that, hey, look at you. You were there. We are still working for somebody else, and you just did it all by yourself. That's when you realize it's happening. When there are employees who are looking up to you for your mentorship and asking you for advices, growing, having that pride on their shoulders that they work with you, that's when you realize that you're an entrepreneur. And then at the end of the day, this is a little bit of a vanity, but when you see that you are still feeding a few of the families, you know you're an entrepreneur, even if in whatever level that is.
Awesome. And it's a proud moment. So let's shift this conversation to the field of communication. The field of communication, I believe, has gone through a sea shift of change in the past 2 decades. What has your observation on the industry been like? I think you are one of the few people within the industry who's at the intersection of so many, I would say, circles, conversations, that you'd be the right person to answer this question.
Thank you for making me believe that I come from that era, and rightly said so. I remember going back 15 years, almost 15 years back, we used to make media lists, and with the name of the journalist and content writers, feature writers, so on and so forth. Today, when you make the list, it's more about, it has sub pointers of also having influencers, content creators, content curators, and so on and so forth, right? There are so many levels of influencers as well. So I think, the shift has been massive. And today it's not just about B2C, it's a lot about C2C as well, because the word of mouth, the whole belief on reviews and people's experiences. Like, think of the concept of simple unboxing, right? Like, they made it so aspirational. You get a brand and you're unboxing and then you're taking a video of it. But at the end of the day, it has a huge purpose. So I don't remember any of that existed when I entered the communication industry. So probably until last 4 years or 3 years. These kind of concepts are pretty new. At the same time, today feedback is prompt. You cannot shy away. Did a mistake, you did it, you cannot hide it. That's one of the biggest one. Every move is being watched, and that's the reason it is all the more important to be honest, truthful. You cannot have another personality and show another. I'll tell you, one of my teammates once told me, and now for the last few months, I've been a little less active on my own Instagram, but at one point in time, for a longer period of time, I was very active on my Instagram, and I was doing a lot of videos, so on and so forth. So one of my colleagues said, Neha, I have realized when you're not sticking on certain subjects, people don't know what are the areas that you really are passionate about, and not just about arts, paints, music, not just about that, about social issues, about things which are happening around you. So these things were not as prominent. In fact, leaders were asked to keep it hush a decade back. But today, these kind of changes have observed, and I think it's usually appreciate the fact that today people want to see the real you, and there's a human factor in everything that you do.
Absolutely. With the explosion that has happened in terms of mediums of communication, the reasons for accountability have increased. While visibility has increased, so has accountability. But can we delve a little bit into the shift in human behavior that has become more involved post the pandemic in some cases? and evolved in others, and maybe some still have a long way to go. Have you seen any behavioral shift that concerns you, especially in the field of communication?
I think there have been a lot of shift as such, but I will want to talk again about the human factor, the empathy. I think that is one thing, inclusiveness and empathy. These are two things that the brands, not just brands, I mean, even individuals on an individual PR level and positioning level, you see, these are the two elements that have really taken the center stage. And to quote it, or for example, I mean, I again don't remember concepts like chai pe charcha or coffee table conversations that happen within organizations today. Today, leaders are expected to have one-to-one conversations once a week or once in 15 days with every employee, depending on, of course, the employee's strength. And something as basic as, okay, you get your coffee, I get my coffee, let's talk. This is something which did not happen initially. So from PR perspective, from even the cultural shift that we are seeing in today's time, I think being emotionally available, empathy, emotional intelligence, these are some of the important changes that I have seen catching up. And of course, in the West, diversity and inclusion, emotional intelligence, these are the concepts that we saw. I mean, I saw almost 12 years back catching up already. And that was the time when the industry started talking about, and I'm not just talking about communication and PR, but also L&D industry started talking about that, hey, these are the new concepts and let's train the trainer because this is what is going to catch up. And that's exactly what happened. Everything comes to India almost within 5 years, 6 years of a span. So this is something which I have been observing and this has evolved. Something which I am still fearful of and is the lack of face-to-face conversations and face-to-face conversations language being replaced by emoticons. And this is something as basic as I have been observing with my own cousins. They choose to talk less and express more in emoticons, and I don't really know what's going on in their mind. After all, emoticons are not as much as the syllabus in our language, right? So yeah.
Interesting changes. Well, I do hope the art of writing and reading still sticks around. You have created a very interesting tangent from being in the field of communication to leadership training and development where you are. How do you feel this particular field that you've created, this niche that you've created, the PR field can benefit from it? How can they benefit from it?
I like the way you're trying to infuse the aspect of PR bit, but I would like to still keep it to a human bit of it, right? Because at the end of the day, whoever you are, whatever you are, and all the more as PR, we deal with certain things, certain behaviors much more than anyone else. For example, stress. For example, performance pressure, agility. In today's time, PR has really seen a shift when it comes to agility. Be able to have assertive communication. So emotional intelligence, again, when you are dealing with such high energy environment, while on one hand, it's amazing to be a part of that environment. On the other hand, you really crumble if you're not prepared for it. And unfortunately, and I would like to say this, that the PR industry has still not taken up training and development as much as they should for their employees. They still feel that mentorship and guidance and environment is more than enough to be able to train their respective individuals. And I'm not talking about senior leaders. Senior leaders are being sent to some of the finest training platforms to get trained. But coming back to the same thing, that expecting the senior leaders to be able to effectively pass on the same thing to the middle level managers, middle level staff, employees, is still lagging behind. So through this, I would want to say that it's important and it should happen. But on the other hand, I think when I just talked about the skills that are lacking or that are important in this industry, training and development does exactly that. Now, the only difference is that when we train a PR and communication professional, we try to make sure that the trainer who goes for the respective training is experienced enough to be able to bring those right environment examples for the PR industry professionals to be able to relate to. It's far more helpful and it's must. It should happen. It's definitely important.
So coming to the PR industry, we rely on effective communication for our bread and butter. Can you help our audience identify today and understand the top 5 mistakes that they should avoid to ensure that their communication is effective?
One of the reasons I'm laughing is because I read your recent LinkedIn post, and the way you've expressed it, I think that should exactly be the answer for this question. I mean, I was so amazed to see how beautifully you've expressed that whole, in a looked like a little story, and it made so much sense. So I think taking a cue from there, my first point, and I totally agree to that, would be not succumbing to the pressure of a prospective client or an existing client. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes most of the PR professionals do, and mostly middle management, like you rightly mentioned a while back. So that's one, because that digs a hole in your self-esteem, and at the same time it makes you question your own communication. So linking it back to assertive communication. So I think that's number one. And again, take kudos for your article. And whoever has not read it should read it. It's amazing. Takes me back to my corporate days when I was the client and I used to write briefs to agencies. Won't deny that. uh, Number two, in my opinion, is not finding actual USPs or not finding enough, or rather, let's say, creating linear content wherein you are not able to find various different aspects of the product, the service, the whatever you are trying to pitch to that. And unfortunately, I mean, I can quote this, that there was a time in my career when I was asked to create 150 stories. This was during the launch of one of the hotels that I was doing. So before pre-preparation, part of pre-preparation. So I was asked to draft 150 USP or content pieces, which I could keep sending to the media in the next 6 months, so that we are always on top of the game. But they did not understand the fact that it's not about 150, it's about 15, but you really create those 15 and talk about it and create multiple top PR points, the head points. So this is one of the things which I feel PR professionals do not realize. Don't just hype up everything. That's my number three. It's not about hyping all your messages. Not all press releases have to have the best of the vocabulary and oh, this is the best. Please stop using these words. Nothing is best in today's time. Like Karan Johar recently mentioned in his interview with Anupama Chopra that the time for stardom is gone and it's now more about the actors and the artists. And so similarly, the time for all this swanky language is gone. It's more about realistic language, more about relatability. So be that, I think I'm not really counting how many have I said, but I think next one, which is very important, is trying to erase your mistakes. And I'll give you an example most recently. And this is one of the other companies that we have. That's the main company. And so this is into branding and marketing and all that. So one of the very IT giant, okay, so they recently called up and they said that there is this one person responding to one of our leaders' post on LinkedIn, and can you please hide all the messages that he has been putting? And this is not a PR company that I'm talking about. They're a branding and advertising company. So they did it because that's what they were supposed to do. But when I got to know about it, the very first thing I said that you cannot do this. This is like leaving a customer on a customer call, hanging on a customer call, or just hanging up on a customer. So this is one thing you cannot do. You should not be erasing anything that does not go your way. In fact, find out. That's one of the kind of crisis communication plan that you should have ready. So the two more would be my most favorite, and also now that I'm a part of the L&D industry, the most important would be emotional intelligence. Having the empathy, the EQ factor in you. For example, when you are calling up a certain journalist or trying to find out what exactly is happening out there, and or just as simple as finding the status of your release, it's a lot more about understanding what could be the environment the person is in, or taking a step forward toward being empathic. It's no more the same world that we were living in. Today, a lot of things have changed, and even journalists have a lot to prove on not just one form of media, so many different. So have that emotional intelligence in you when you are doing this, and you need to practice it. It does not come naturally. Words wise, it looks simple, but it does not come naturally. The last one for me would be the art of engaging conversation. Because like I was saying a while back, right, that emoticons, the journalist fraternity still does not believe in emoticons. So you cannot rely on that. To be able to strike a conversation beyond press releases, to be able to understand. And this is not new. This is the basic, this is the core of public relations, right? So please start re-exercising all of those things which determine the human element in the public relations, the public element, like they say. So yeah, these would be my 5.
Very sane advice, Neha. Thank you for sharing that. Before we wrap up, we have a quick rapid fire for you. One communication skill that you think will never die out.
Absolutely, emotional intelligence. Right on top.
Awesome. And one communication skill that you want to see die out this year.
Okay. You know what? Honestly, I've been the last person to do rapid fires. And if I go to coffee with Karan, I will be just the last person to win a hamper. So please don't put me through this pressure.
Okay. I'm going to start that again. One communication skill that you want to see die out this year.
I think non-assertiveness, to be able to hold your grounds.
Awesome. And your life advice for the PR industry?
No, although my life has just started and I'm forever young, I think I'll bring it back to the human factor. Try to understand that PR is less of technology and press releases or all the material that you collect. It is more about relationships, more about connections, keeping up, empathy, human element, emotional intelligence, inclusivity. Also, always be well-read. That's the most important. It is never going to die out. Actually, I should have said it earlier, but let me say it now. Never going to die out. Well-read, well-read. Be very well-read.
Absolutely. I second that. Thank you so much for joining us, Neha. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Tarun, and lovely to be here on your show. Thanks.
Thank you, Neha. So that was Neha Mishra speaking to us about communication mistakes to avoid. Before we wind up, I will take a moment to give a shout out to the good folks at PRPOI for making this happen. We will see you again in the next episode with another intriguing conversation from the world of communication and media. Stay tuned.